Duskmourn's previews are finished. They're finished. They're done. They'll never work in this town again. Because they're too busy working at making me not able to stop thinking about them. What? To follow up the semi-pessimistic video I made leading up to Duskmourn, I want to review the flavour of these cards. All the cards! We're going to look at all of them. What better way to know the plane of Duskmourn than by judging the flavour of all of its cards, against the bit of lore we already have, and my own fickle opinions. There's a lot to love about Magic's new impossible mansion / 80s tropes horror mashup world, and some things to love not so much. But I want to start positively, so in this first video of a few that I'll release hopefully close together, reviewing all the cards, we're going to take a look at Duskmourn's monsters, the terrifying stalkers of the demonic halls. So we'll start with the main guy himself, Valgavoth, the demon lord of Duskmourn, the expander of the house that swallowed the world and now is the house, as the demon's consciousness is woven throughout it. Valgavoth, Terror Eater, is 6 and 3 black for a legendary elder demon that's a 9/9 with flying and lifelink and ward of sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. If a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. Antonio Jose Manzanado's art for Valgavoth I have been a big fan of since it was spoiled. This excellent moth demon melding into the architecture of the house. I love the stairs encroaching up into wings, and I'm a big fan of Valgavoth's design, and it was a good thing to get that right, I feel. Maybe the slit at the center of his face would look scarier as eyes, but then I also kind of read those dots below it as eyes as well, which makes the image sort of creepier in a way, or his design creepier in a way. Outside of that, the card, I think, does a pretty good job of creating the idea of turning the board into the house in a way, where your opponent's creatures don't die, they instead are trapped in exile. And then also letting you cast them is sort of mimicking Valgavoth's ability to warp the denizens of the house he gets his clutches on, turning them into Razorkin and cultists, etc. So I think this is a pretty excellent flavour translation of Valgavoth. Oh, maybe, I guess the only way I could think of you could maybe do the flavour of creating the house better would be an effect that's like Urborgs in some way, where you're sort of affecting all the lands. But this is a more powerful effect than that would likely be anyway. So good card, Valgavoth. Flavor pass or something. I'm not going to say that for every card. Let's just move on. Next, I want to look at the other demons in the house. During the process of Valgavoth expanding the boundaries of the house and swallowing the world, he made a point of obliterating all the other demons on the plane, most of which died in the process, some of which were left as shattered remnants of themselves. So I like that all the demons we see in Duskmourn have this sort of undead-looking quality to them. Very skeletal and ragged. Doomsday Excruciator we saw as one of the earlier spoilers. It costs 6 black pips to cast. It's a demon and a 6/6 with flying. When Doomsday Excruciator enters, if it was cast, each player exiles all but the bottom 6 cards of their library face down. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card. And the flavor text, all stars grow dark. All worlds come to an end. Doomsday Excruciator is referencing the card Doomsday, which does a very similar thing. Let's type it in so I can remember what it does specifically. Yes, search your library and graveyard for 5 cards and exile the rest. Put the chosen card on top of your library in any order. You lose half of your life, round it up. And it's a classic combo piece card, because you can stack your combo up and then there's nothing else in your library except it, essentially. Or if you just need your library gone, that's also a good way to do that. So Doomsday Excruciator is going to do that for everybody in a more balanced, I guess, in a way, effect. And kind of just a good card for ending games quickly, honestly. I like the use of focus in Dennis Sipurko's art here. Look like they're referencing a previous printing of Doomsday, which also had floating orbs. And it's just an excellently painted piece. I love the quality of the cloth and the demon's wings, and the out-of-focus background sort of drawing him even more intensely into our point of view. Vile Mutilator costs 5 and 2 black for a 6/5. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or enchantment. It flies and it has trample. When it enters, each opponent sacrifices a non-token enchantment, then sacrifices a non-token creature. Like lots of demons, you have to make a deal with this one if you really want to utilize its effect by sacrificing a creature enchantment of your own, and then it'll snatch up your opponent's glimmer right out of that doorframe. I think offering you the option to sacrifice an enchantment to this sort of adds an implication that your own glimmer was sacrificed in order to wreck this next one. One of the earlier pieces of art we saw for Duskmourn. An excellent use of light And the spiraling staircase into the background, referencing Duskmourn's surreal nature, is also delightful. Miasma Demon, 4 and 2 black. It flies. When it enters, you may discard any number of cards. When you do, up to that many target creatures, each get -2/-2 until end of turn. Hush, little ants. I can rid you of your troubles with a breath. All I ask in return is a drop of blood and a promise. You're completing a dark deal with the demon by discarding cards, and minus effects are commonly associated with toxins and diseases and poisons, etc. So, card feels flavorful. I love how the muted colours of the demon are being complemented by the sickly neon colours of the sky and fog. Oh, and the fog subtly emanating off the demon's hands looks perfect. What sickly looking colours. It's gorgeous. And these fingers / insect legs adorning its back. What a great addition to the classic Duskmourn demon design. And then Demonic Covenant, an enchantment in the demon section. What? 4 and 2 black for a Kindred enchantment demon. Kindred being the word that's now replaced Tribal on cards. And to be honest, I think I like Kindred better than Tribal even. It feels more flavorful. And much, much better than Typal. Whenever one or more demons you control attack a player, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. At the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying, then mill 2 cards. If 2 cards that share all their card types were milled this way, sacrifice Demonic Covenant. I like that it feels like a demonic contract in that I have to scratch my head about how to read this. What confusing text. It sacrifices itself when you mill 2 cards that share a type, but they have to share all types, so it works well with Delirium, etc. Because you're playing cards with more types, and less of those types might converge. Yeah, I mean, it does demon-y things. You draw cards and lose life, and it can make you a demon whilst milling and potentially sacrificing itself. Demons just feel so thematic to black that if you just do black things on cards, they will feel demonic. This demon looks a little bit less spindly than the previous, so maybe it's speaking to the demon being restored in some way by his covenant with this survivor. And I like the demon's eyes watch you from wherever you are. Maybe they're looking straight at us, maybe they're just amorphous. Next, I wanted to look at what I think are going to be the Cellar Spawn, which are supposed to be the manifestations of Valgavoth's daydreams given form. Monsters that he perceives as beautiful, but to everyone else are horrific, spindly things that will scare you into death or insanity. It seems like they've been given the horror creature type for the most part. I'm not sure if everything under the horror creature type is a Cellar Spawn, but it seems like the Cellar Spawn that we've seen are definitely horrors so far. Silent Hall Creeper. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/1 enchantment creature horror. It can't be blocked, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Put 2+1 counters on it, draw a card, and it becomes a copy of another target creature you control. Excellent, really. And just a really good... I think this is almost like an excellent representation of a horror movie monster that is relentless and constantly surprising you. I love that it's constantly changing up its tactics. It's only using them once as well, so as not to bore the audience. And it can't be blocked, so good luck stopping it, you know? Excellent horror movie antagonist in terms of mechanics. Plus, Joshua Raphael's art was definitely chosen to represent Cellar Spawn in the guide for a reason. It's excellent. And obviously the way the environment is warping around it speaks to it being a pure extension of Valgavoth, and also the creature's ability to just hit you unabated. Grasping Long Neck is 2 and a green for a 4/2 enchantment creature horror. It's got reach. When it dies, you gain 2 life. We ran, but it was all around us, like a writhing, flailing forest of rubbery limbs and stabbing talons. Survivor's Journal. In Matthias Colros's art here, they use lighting incredibly effectively, I think, to create depth, as this survivor is enveloped in the grasping limbs and neck of the long neck. Also, we can see a similar kind of warping environment effect on the long neck's claws, as it directly manifests Valgavoth's influence. Mechanically, I guess 2 life is fine, it doesn't really do anything exciting, but not every card can be the biggest flavor win ever. It's got reach and long limbs. That's flavorful, right? And then we have Demolisher Spawn. 5 and 2 green for a 7/7 enchantment creature. Horror. Trample, Haste, Delirium. Whenever Demolisher Spawn attacks, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, other attacking creatures get +4/+4 until end of turn. It rips through the Hauntwoods like a chainsaw, leaving a crushed and bloody trail behind. I like this alligatorial Cellar Spawn. It's like a raptor or Spinosaurus face or something. And I really love how it demonstrates more of the diversity of the Cellar Spawn. Which I kind of wish we got a few more Cellar Spawn overall Because in the story, at least at the end, they show up like a lot. They're there a lot. And in some of the art, they seem to be populating the backgrounds quite a lot. But there's not a ton of Cellar Spawn cards. This acts similarly to lots of green cards that work like Craterhoof Behemoth and other things. This does it every time it attacks, I guess, which is... Well, the fact that it doesn't give them trample makes it probably not as good, but it is repeatable, at least. Like that creature, I suppose... I'm not quite sure where the flavor of it giving all your creatures a buff is coming from, unless its wake is helping them. I don't know, or it's just an effective frontline. Who knows? Regardless. If I pick Demolisher Spawn up on for being confusing with this flavor, then we're going to have to take a million cards to court over it. I don't think this next one is a Cellar Spawn, but it is an enchantment creature horror again. Clammy Prowler is a 3 and a blue for a 2/5. When it attacks, another target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn, which is a common ability you see associated with swimming and water, implying a sort of swimming under your opponent's creature's grasp. Sometimes survivors in the flood pits hear their own drowning voices crying out for help. Only the ones who flee immediately live to speak of it. John Tedrick's art is also excellent here. I like how the horror nature of this set causes a lot of artists to show their lighting chops, and we've got lots of interestingly lit pieces like this one, with the red of blood or some other emanating light coming from underneath the clammy prowler. This he's not actually a merfolk, but this fish horror monster that's definitely referencing the creature from the Black Lagoon and that kind of creature, although that's a little earlier of a horror reference than a lot of the rest of what Duskmourn is referencing. Appendage, Amalgam, 2 and a black for a 3/2 enchantment creature horror. Flash, when it attacks, surveil 1. It moves with the speed of a spider, but none of its skittering grace, scuttling to the sound of mucus-covered fingers. A beautiful amalgam of appendages. I like how it's exactly what it says on the tin. Again, I'm not 100% sure if this is a Cellar Spawn or not. It's just under the category of horror, which is where the rest of them are. It does have the environmental warping effect, which is executed excellently here, along with the lighting of the windows across the creature. Again, just stunningly well done, especially when you enlarge it past card size. I suppose the nature of it surveilling is because it would make an effective spy scuttling around in the gutters of the house. And next we have the Master of Keys. X and a white and a blue and a black for a 3/3 legendary enchantment creature horror. It flies. When Master of Keys enters, put X +1/+1 counters on it and mill twice X cards. Each enchantment card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. As of the recording of this bit right now, if they're planning to do a lore of the Legendary Creatures article, that isn't out yet. So I don't know anything about the lore behind the Master of Keys, but it does very much look like a Cellar Spawn with the jagged limbs that it has, lightning bolting out from each side and everywhere. It's probably got the most intense warping effect of all of the Cellar Spawn warping effects behind them that we see behind it. A very imposingly painted, powerful figure. I suppose the little beady eyes glowing under the hood are kind of creepy, but it's maybe among the less scary of the Cellar Spawn designs. I feel like I'm about to fight it in Bloodborne. Or is it just reminding me of Murgo's Wet Nurse, but not quite as cool as that looked? I'm sounding too down. I actually really like this piece a lot. I think maybe to represent at least the only legendary Cellar Spawn we have, I just want it to be a bit scarier. And then, saving the best till last, we have Ancient Cellar Spawn. 1 and 2 black for a 3/3 enchantment creature horror. Each spell you cast that's a demon, horror, or nightmare costs 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast it was less than its mana value, target opponent loses life equal to the difference. Where it treads, plants wither. Where it breathes, poison spreads. It's beautiful, and I'm going to dig into the art in a minute, but I love that upon looking at building a Valgavoth Terror Eater list, I was sad at how few of the Cellar Spawn actually go in his deck. You can fit the Appendage Amalgam in there if you want, it's not great, but Ancient Cellar Spawn is perfect in Valgavoth, which I very much appreciate, as Valgavoth is going to be letting you cast all your opponent's spells for 0 mana, and then Ancient Cellar Spawn will be hitting people for the full cost of those spells. Oh, it loses life as well. Oh, how tasty. And also, it is just stunning. I will have to find a larger version of this. And the more you look at it, I think, especially if you can look at it in larger than card size somewhere, you can notice a ton of details about this image that just make it extra fantastic. Oh, it's so good. The more you look at this image, the more you can see the whole of the last 30 seconds of it play out. You can see the door opened in the background from which it has emerged, and then its claw marks dragged around the edge of the door, across the background and into the foreground of the image. And just behind the monster, we can see where it seems there used to be a wall a few moments ago. And whether it's torn through it or the environment has just been warped around it, as the wallpaper and the floorboards seem to currently be doing. We don't know. And then the green lighting, which of course gives the monster this incredible horror movie illuminated stare, causing its antlers to cast shadows across the ceiling. But the green lighting gives it a horrific, unearthly glow, but also implies, through the nature of their tech, that it's survivors in that room. Just incredible. I love the idea that it's just become more monstrous, growing these horrific antlers over time. I sort of assumed that Celespawn were more temporal creatures, but I love the idea of them becoming more grotesque as they persist. Next, I want to look at the Overlords, which are supposed to be the major Celespawn. They're Celespawn like the others, except these are handcrafted by Valgavoth rather than dreamed into existence, and they are meant to rule over each of the 5 sections within the house, and are named after the section they rule over. All of them are enchantment creatures, avatar horrors, and all of them have the impending ability, wherein you can cast them for less, but they come in with 4 time counters on them, and they aren't creatures, only enchantments, until the last time counter is removed on your end step. So Overlord of the Boiler Bilges is 4 and 2 red for a 5/5, with impending for 4, 2 and 2 red. When Overlord of the Boiler Bilges enters or attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target. I do love this excellent monstrosity, taking the sort of the many limb aspect of the Celespawn and transforming those limbs into the pipes and furnaces of the Boiler Bilges, I think is a great creature design. And it's definitely one of my preferred of the Japanese alts, this time by Akio, I think. I'm not a massive fan of those cards, if I'm honest, but this is probably my favorite one in terms of art, and has a excellent Cheshire grin. Overlord of the Flood Pits is 3 and 2 blue for a 5/3, with impending 4 for 3, 1 and 2 blue. It's got flying. When it enters or attacks, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Interesting that this Overlord is more sort of evocative of a library than water, although there's definitely a sort of a falling water effect around it, and maybe above it as well. But either way, I guess it's sort of evocative of water in that it's swimming, and it's also full of books, which is maybe another aspect of the Flood Pits. I can't remember. Overlord of the Hauntwoods, 3 and 2 green for a 6/5. Its impending forecast is also 3, 1 and 2 green. When it enters or attacks, create a tapped colorless land token named Everywhere, that is every basic land type. Perhaps the strongest of the designs of the Overlords, especially the ones we've seen thus far. It has 2 curtain rails sticking through its head, and I still think it looks fantastic. And it looks better for the curtain rails. The tangling limbs and the painterly quality of Tiffany Turrells are excellent. And that same quality on the background around it is also perfect for evoking the nature of the Hauntwoods to be treacherous and confusing and deceiving to navigate, which is perfectly evoked through creating a colorless land named Everywhere. I love that idea. And it's creepy. What a creepy land token to make. I don't think I've got that token available to look at yet. Hopefully soon. The sort of smoky quality of the vines / branches warping around it. I like this piece even more and more the more I look at it. It's a creepy, tiny little mask. The Japanese version is kind of just a worse version of the same character. Just same character, but lacking a lot of the character that the previous image had. Tiffany Turrell's version is infinitely preferable to me. Overlord of the Mistmoors, 5 and 2 white for a 6/6. Its impending cost is 2 and 2 white. When it enters or attacks, create 2 2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying. I wish they were just called Moth. I know creature tokens don't commonly get named. I guess it's like adding a bunch more text on the card, but I don't know. Call them Moth. It'd be just cool if the moths we'll call them Moth. I'm sure they will look like moths, which is absolutely fine, but it would be nice if they had the name Moth. Stephen Belladin's art is excellent. This wispy antlers above the top of this Celespawn creature draped in... I like that it's just sort of draped in furniture, and it's hard to tell where the furniture ends and this thing begins. And that should look silly, but it is quite intimidating. The low angle with the backlighting definitely sells that a lot. There's this strange sort of... And maybe it would make more sense if we could see the original art uncropped. But there's like a sort of strange brown goo in the bottom left of the card, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me out of context. Maybe that, again... What is that? It would be interesting to know. Is it just the environment warping around the thing again? Which is, again, an excellent detail I like with the Celespawn and the larger kin. But I just need to see this full art for that to make sense to me. The Japanese altar is fine. I quite like the lighting on this one. It just isn't... I just don't like it as much. This one's got a painterly quality and actually an excellent use of light, but with the backlighting illuminating through the translucent veil curtains this thing is wearing. But again, it just doesn't have as much mood. Definitely not as much of a horror tone as the previous image. Overlord of the Baelmerk. Oh, it's so gorgeous. Maybe my favorite creature art in the set now? I'm not sure, but that's definitely up there. Absolutely my favourite Overlord for look, even over the Hauntwoods. Sorry, Hauntwoods, you're still beautiful. This is stupendously gorgeous, though. Overlord of the Baelmerk, 3 and 2 black for a 5/5. Enchantment creature, avatar horror. Impending 5 for 1 and a black. When Overlord of the Baelmerk enters or attacks, mill 4 cards, then you may return a non-avatar creature card or a planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. Yeah, it mills stuff. Which is a thing that black does a little less commonly than blue, but pretty regularly. And it returns creatures from your graveyard, which is a thing that black does all the time. I like how the impending cost affects the value of its ability, in that in the beginning, it's probably more valuable for you to mill those 4 cards on turn 2 or whatever. And then around turn 5, you might have something in the bin that you want to return, essentially. The art is just so good. Oh my god. I'm in love with it. Grotesque and beautiful. It's like that perfect combination of those 2 qualities that you see in the best of FromSoft's boss design, or just creature design in general. It's an amalgam of corpses that has the architecture weaving into it like the Cellspawn do, except here it's merging into ribcage elements, and it's all held together with Valgavoth's webbing. 2 horse heads and an eye for a head. I love its godlike pose. It doesn't look like it should be able to support its own weight. The environment warping is so subtly done and perfect, and the lines chosen in the construction of the room are just perfect for evoking that creepy warping effect. The lighting in the background is stunning. Just, this thing emerging out of the darkness into the exposure in front of our eyes. Yeah, it's definitely giving us Baphomet at the minute. And the red portal opening up above it, like it's just descended down unto us. I wish I could see this art in higher res to appreciate it better. It looks like Babs Webb's work is very pencil-based, and it shows and it looks incredible. Oh, mate, that's like probably up there with my top favourite ever creature designs. Fantastic. Next I want to look at nightmares, which are the manifestations of survivors' fears given form inside the house. But before it was Duskmourn, the unnamed plane of Duskmourn had multiple realms, 2 non-physical and 1 physical. Prior to the Ascension, there used to be at least 3 separate realms of existence, 1 physical realm and 2 immaterial realms where demons and spirits resided. As the house grew, the demonic realm was folded into the confines of the house, and the spirit realm squeezed out to the edges as much as the plane space in the Blind Eternities allowed. As Duskmourn is a merging of its plane's previously material and immaterial realms, and also is Valgavoth's consciousness stretched across it. So, the combination of these realities allows manifestations of emotion, etc., to birth themselves into reality. Obviously, more skewed towards the negative as it's Duskmourn, although we'll see some positive ones in the future of this video. But these are the nightmares, the fears of the survivors in the house birthed into reality. I think I just repeated that thing I said earlier, but whatever. So most of these are named fear of, and then the thing. I'm not sure how much direction was given to. It seems like there are some commonalities which you can sort of see amongst all of the fear cards, but it does seem like artists were given a fair amount of leeway to sort of design their own physical representations of these intangible concepts, these human fears. And I think these are a mixed bag. Some of these pieces I like a lot. I don't think any of them, if I'm honest, are quite as scary as I want them to be, given that they are intended to be manifestations of fear itself. I think if any of the cards were intending to have like truly creepy art, this is sort of where you would want to see that, and most of them are cleverly executed, if not really evocative of actual fear. Fear of Lost Teeth. 1 black for a 1/1 enchantment creature nightmare. When it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target and you gain 1 life. And the 1 life gained is your fee as the dentist. As it drew closer, Sam felt her own teeth wriggle in their sockets, as if they wanted to leap out and join the thing. Love the flavor text. The art is excellently, competently done, and I love the idea of it. It's maybe a bit over-designed to truly be scary, but it's an excellent piece. I love the massive screaming souls in the middle of this thing. And then Fear of Burning Alive is 4 and 2 red for a 4/4 enchantment creature nightmare. When it enters, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. It's got Delirium, which is a returning mechanic from Shadows of Innistrad, which is a word that groups together cards that care about you having 4 or more card types in your graveyard. As your library represents your mind, having those 4 card types in the graveyard is designed to represent your fractured sanity, essentially. So Delirium, whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, Fear of Burning Alive deals that amount of damage to target creature that player controls. When it says that amount of damage, does it mean damage equal to the number of card types, or damage equal to the non-combat damage that... Oh, that's so confusing. Anyway, I actually don't know what this card does. I'm assuming it means it deals the amount of damage equal to the card types, because that was the last amount that was referred to in the card, I'm guessing. No, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't mean the card types thing. I don't know. There's such a confusing wording. Anyway, fire is typically represented in Magic by non-combat damage, lots of burn spells, etc. So having it do stuff to do with non-combat damage for Fear of Burning Alive makes sense. Having it be like a bug that's spitting fire and has a bag of screaming fire heads with it is fine, I suppose. Again, it's a bit abstract, and I don't dislike how it's painted or anything. It's not very scary, not evocative of the first part of the name. Fear of Missing Out costs 1 and a red for a 2/3 enchantment creature nightmare. When it enters, discard a card, then draw a card. It's got Delirium. Whenever Fear of Missing Out attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 or more card types in your graveyard, untap target creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. I actually really like the art here by John Stanko. I'm not quite sure how this evokes the fear of missing out, especially as these spirit heads seem to be a feature of all of the nightmares that we've seen so far, so I'm not sure how this card evokes the fear of missing out. Tell me in the comments, honestly, if I'm missing something, because I don't. Haha, that wasn't even supposed to be a pun. But yeah, do give me your interpretation of this card, or any of the nightmares if you want to, because please tell me your interpretation of any nightmare card. That's actually a very interesting thing to hear from people. It's a creepy monster design. I think the lighting is really good, and the warping environment around it is also, which I suppose is a common thing around a lot of these cards. I mean, it looks good. I kind of wish WotC didn't call a card FOMO. It just, the set is a bit memey already, and also Fear of Missing Out isn't really a fear. It's more of like an anxiety or a insecurity, you know. It's not like you're actually afraid. You're not feeling palpable fear of missing out on something. Fear of Isolation. It's a 2/3. 1 and 1 blue for an enchantment creature nightmare with flying. As an additional cost to cast this spell, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. Which on its face is quite nice for a cheap uncommon to evoke the feeling of isolation. Forcing you to return something as a part of the cost is pretty thematic. On the second day after he'd been separated from his friends, Tino worried they'd be panicking at his absence. By the 4th, he was certain they'd never cared for him at all. Poor Tino is doom spiraling in the really effective flavor text here, actually. And I think all the card does come together to set quite an excellent tone. The stark quality this card evokes of coldness lends to that feeling of isolation quite effectively. The fear of isolation being represented by a screaming head isolated in the darkness of this gaping maw feels pretty thematic. With all these grasping hands reaching out and pulling things towards it, I think that's pretty excellent. Irina Nordsoul's art is excellently painted, and also I think she came up with an excellent design for isolation itself. Fear of Immobility. 4 and a white for a 4/4. When it enters, tap up to 1 target creature. If an opponent controls that creature, put a stun counter on it, which means it doesn't untap during its opponent's next untap step, basically. Forcing creatures to tap and then not untap is pretty ideal translation of immobility. Can't really get better than that than making creatures not be able to move for a turn. As it slunk toward her, Nina told her legs to run, but they stayed rooted and rigid. She screamed, but no sound left her lips. I don't know I don't know about the rotation of how writing works with flavor text in different Magic sets, but I feel like sets are prone to either have lots of good flavor text or lots of bad flavor text, and this is definitely one of the sets where I think the quality of the flavor text on the whole is actually really good. And this bulbous thing, I love Martin Diego Sedaba's design here for the immobility as well, with this giant bulbous head and antlers that look like they're piercing the head itself and are getting stuck on everything, including like this rope hanging off it. And also not having a human body, like a deer's body, I think is also better for projecting a human fear of immobility. Fear of Infinity. 1 blue and 1 black for a 2/2. It's got flying and lifelink. It can't block. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, you may return Fear of Infinity from your graveyard to your hand. So, Eerie, the mechanic, is basically just Constellation from Theros, except also it triggers when the new type room unlocks, basically, which we can get into later in the video. There are some nightmares so terrible, you're never truly rid of them. I'm torn. No, I'm not really that torn, actually. Fernando Falcone's art here is fantastic. I love the lighting and the texture of the beast. It feels like some sort of classic metal album cover, almost. The soul's flying out of its head into the middle. The colouring is actually just lovely. Yeah, or this almost also feels like an image from a bestiary of some ancient tabletop game, or like a ye olde edition of Dungeons and Dragons, etc. Yeah, and of course it's Ouroborosing itself, so which leads to the idea of infinity as well. I'm not quite sure where it can't block other than to balance the card. And also, just if you look at the creature, like, I guess it probably can't block. It doesn't really look like it can attack, but yeah. It can't block because it's too busy eating its own tail. But yeah, actually also the stillness of this piece as well. Yeah, the more you look at it, actually, the more this works for me. Beautiful. Fear of Surveillance. 1 and 1 white for a 2/2. It's got Vigilance when it attacks Surveil 1. Either using Scry or Surveil here. Surveil is the spookiest Scry, so either using one of those here is obviously an excellent translation of surveilling something. And it's a common, so good job of using... when commons are this flavorful, it's always when commons have to use less parts to achieve their flavor, so it's always more impressive when they do. I love this monster design. Again, the heads are seen, so I'm sure that these heads were a detail given by the World Guide, because they show up in each of them. Let's just double check the Nightmares page again for anything about. So I wonder if the heads are supposed to be in some way representative of the way the guide describes the nightmares as pulling survivors into their bodies. Maybe that is a representation of that. I'm not sure. Fear of Surveillance. I do like the balance between the stillness of all the objects in this piece and how the sort of fish-eyeing warping effect adds kind of movement to it. I love the design of the monster with the teeth, the eyeball, the toothed eyeballs, and the idea of being consumed by perception. Again, I just kind of wish it was a little bit creepier in a way. I know that sounds wrong. I feel like the same image with just the eyeballs extending outwards and into the foreground and sort of being more imposing in that way, as if we're about to be enveloped by this thing. I think that might have just made the image, like, sing for me. It's still really good. I just want it to be a little bit more imposing and scary, but I love the design of it. I love the colors. Oh, I forgot to do the flavor text on the last one. Let's go back and read that. Its unblinking gaze sees every flaw, every shame, every humiliating moment you wish you could forget. Fear of Failed Tests is 4 and a blue for a 2/7. When it deals combat damage to a player, draw that many cards. I'm trying to think. Is this good flavor mechanically? It's to do with tests, and are you testing your opponent when you hit them? I don't know, actually. It draws cards. It's to do with testing. Maybe that's flavorful. But wait! What do you mean this quiz determines half our grade? Zamone muttering in her sleep. I will carve out more of this video at some point to talk about the story more directly, but Zamone and Tyvar's bit of the story was definitely the best part of the main plot. And nothing like this happened in the story, and I'm pretty sure she didn't even... I don't know how long they were there. It didn't feel like a very long time. I don't think she slept while they were there, but either way, a fun bit of flavor text. Jana Heidersdorf, who also painted the last piece. I really like the face on this one, obviously combined with the pose with the bloodied quill flowing out into the spirit heads and marked papers behind it. Oh, of course, it's not red, it's not bloody, it's marked with red, like a teacher might mark something. And the sharp teeth, combined with the lack of eyes, create this very judgmental expression. The fact that you can't see their eyes, I think, is excellent for evoking this fear of judgment. I love some well-painted, creepy hands. Really lovely piece, honestly, and I love the art with more painterly quality. Fear of the Dark is 4 and a black for a 5/5. Whenever Fear of the Dark attacks, if defending player controls no glimmer creatures, it gains Menace and Death Touch until end of turn. The first thing it kills is the light. Definitely one of my favourite designs of the nightmares. I think this piece was actually illustrated in charcoal or similar, maybe not the finished version of it, but I think you can, especially up larger, you can see that quality to it. I love that it's extinguishing this wick between it, and it looks almost like it's made of wax, except its hands are charcoal black. And the heads, I think in this image, work better for me than in all the other nightmares, as they're like wafting out from the candle, the smoke as it gradually fades, leaving only the darkness. Yeah, candle monster, fear of the dark. Oh, and the silhouettes of moths as well in the background. I love the quality of the light behind it as well. For something drawn in burned wood, it looks a hell of a lot like wax. Fear of imposters is 1 and 2 blue for a 3/2. It's got flash. When it enters, counter target spell. Its controller manifests dread. This is probably my least favorite Flavour Flea of all of the nightmares. I suppose they manifest dread. This is a pretty good spell though, isn't it? Like a creature with flash that counters a spell for 3. That's quite good. I think that's... Is that the best spell countering creature we've had? I'm not sure. I love Overcharged Amalgam personally, but it costs 4 and it dies most of the time, which is the point. But still, it dies. This doesn't die. It just gives your opponent a 2/2. So when someone manifests dread, they look at the top 2 cards of their library, put one of them into their graveyard, and the other face down as a 2/2 creature. And if it's a creature card, it can be turned face up for its mana cost, like the ability Manifest. Except this is manifesting dread. And it's a bit... Manifest dread I feel conflicted on, because it's a bit unimaginative from a design point of view. It's just like, manifest dread, it's manifest. And the dread is the bit when the card goes into your bin as well. But in terms of representing how fears, etc., are born into life in the house, I think it's actually a really flavorful mechanic. Manifest dread, boring mechanically, but very flavorful as well. Fear of imposters. I suppose the imposter part of it is that it's replacing the spell. Your opponent thought they were getting whatever they were going to cast, but instead it was actually this guy. I guess you'd think a clone would be a more appropriate use of Fear of Imposters. Or maybe like if it would counter a creature spell and then came as a copy of it or something kind of like that would work better or whatever. I know it's an uncommon, I suppose. It's not going to be doing everything in the world. The art, it's not very exciting. I don't think it really evokes a fear of imposters at all. Just, like, there should be subtlety here, and some sort of worry about whether your friends are who they say they are, etc., rather than the fear. It looks like a Survivor, I suppose, a little bit. Like, it's like a warped Survivor, but what's scary about this monster isn't that it's an imposter, it's that it's, like, got scary mouths and hands and it's all bulbous coming out of it. Look how wrong it looks, whereas that's not really evoking that fear very well. It's not really evoking the fear that people might not be who they say they are, in my opinion. And this is the moment after it transformed, but still, it's not super well communicated on the card. Fear of Exposure, 2 and a green for a 5/4. As an additional cost to cast this spell, tap 2 untapped creatures and or lands you control. And it has Trample. A mouth like that can never keep secrets. So for this monster, the heads have been sucked into, what are those things from Half-Life called? But one of those things. Yeah, and Josu Hernai's excellent lighting here really sells the emotion. On these almost theatrical mask-esque faces. Perhaps they're screaming at the fear of being exposed to the outside world from the mouth. They just wanted to shut again. The environment warping is incredibly well executed by an incredibly excellent and well-experienced magic artist here. I wonder if it must have been part of the world guide, or at least all the individual briefs. The environment warping is very common. It does seem to be a function of Valgavoth's creations, whether direct or indirect. Is the fear of exposure requiring you to tap things so that they're not paying attention when this comes in? It's like, don't look at me, tap, don't look away, tap over there, and then it'll come in. Fear of Falling, 3 and 2 blue for a 4/4. It flies. Whenever Fear of Falling attacks, target creature defending player controls gets -2, -0, and loses flying until your next turn. Which I suppose makes sense for Falling. I suppose the only card that I saw do the flavor of Falling better was that one dinosaur from the Jurassic Park cards that picked your creatures up. I meant had you temporarily gained control of your opponent's creatures and then had a target land and deal 3 damage to them when they came back under your opponent's control. Probably a tall order to ask of a blue card here. So losing flying and getting -2, -0, I suppose, makes sense. Although you'd think they would take some damage from the fall, wouldn't you? It had been months since Jacob had started falling, but only a few weeks since he'd run out of breath to scream. I love Maxine Menard's design. This bird mashed into a falling corpse with the spirit heads here emanating from its back and legs even, / bird tail. Oh, I like that the bird and the man are back to back. I'm not quite sure how to read this image, if we are above it or below it, if we're falling or rising, and I kind of like that. And it feels intentional. All there is a spiraling demise. Beautiful piece. Fear of Sleep Paralysis. 5 and a blue for a 6/6. Flyer. Eerie whenever Fear of Sleep Paralysis or another enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, tap up to one target creature and put a stun counter on it. Stun counters can't be removed from permanents your opponent's control. Oh, that's actually really cool. So Flavour Fleet, I do love how this card paralyzes your opponents, turns your stun counters into never untap counters. And it almost feels like it is infesting their sleep. Whereas before your opponent's creatures could just sleep off a stun counter, now they are stuck within the demonic dream. Joshua Raphael's design for the Fear of Sleep Paralysis is awesome. This figure enveloped in and these wings made of bedsheets with demonic hands reaching out. It almost looks like it was a victim of sleep paralysis. It looks like basically the sleep paralysis demons have enveloped this poor soul and are now running his body from the bed. The subtle out-of-focus background lighting is amazing as well, especially for highlighting the demon's wings. It's not a demon, you know what I mean? I suppose one way to go with this image would have been to incorporate more classic sleep paralysis iconography, like the characters from Nightmare, the image. But I think having the idea of turning a victim of sleep paralysis in the throes of it, using that imagery to build the monster, was a way more original and an interesting idea. Fear of Being Hunted. 1 and 2 red for a 4/2. It's got haste, and it must be blocked if able. It makes no effort to hide itself, savouring its prey's rising panic as the sound of its clacking skull grows closer and closer. What lovely environment warping! Who can tell where the spirit heads, and the environment and the monster begin and end? I love the detail of the survivor's gear on the foreground as well, as this thing is hot on their trail. It's double skull mouth head, it's all jaws. His face is all ready to eat you. And what big ears it has! All the better to hear you with. Just another of the gorgeous monster designs. The many, many that Duskmourn has. I don't know if I like the flavour of must be blocked. I suppose that allows it to hunt other creatures, though, in a way. I suppose if you were to target... Again, we're dealing with uncommon, so it's not going to do everything. But allowing you to pick the thing would have felt more like that. It's usually flavoured around the idea of luring something. I suppose that maybe that's the right flavour then. Yeah, I think I'm being harsh. I think this will feel like you're hunting something when you swing out with it and your opponent has to throw something into its maws. Maws is accurate. Fear of Abduction, the strangest nightmare that we have. 4 and 2 white for a 5/5. As an additional cost to cast this spell, exile a creature you control. It flies. When it enters, exile target creature an opponent controls. When it leaves the battlefield, put each card exiled with it into its owner's hand. So it's kind of a removal spell, plus a flicker spell for you, kind of. Delayed flicker plus temporary removal, while this alien shows up and abducts multiple people. I'm not quite sure where the nightmare begins and the environment ends, which I don't have a problem with. And I actually love the execution of this piece, Fernando Falcone, again for this set. Incredibly executed, painterly horror lighting. Actually, the intense lighting on the absent bed is great for selling this idea of abduction. It is very odd to have like an alien, like a grey, just on a magic card. There's a few references to UFOs in the set, which I think I'll just talk about now rather than in their individual sections. No, I'll talk about them probably actually when we get to those bits. But there's also Unidentified Hovership and Etched Cornfield, both alluding to aliens in a less direct way. Whereas this is just like an alien that you might see on any iconography, like an emoji alien. I don't really have a reason why this iconography shouldn't show up in Magic, other than it's just very weird. I guess it just implies that people in the multiverse are afraid of aliens, at least. Not that they necessarily exist, but it's just weird that this is their conception of aliens as well. Yeah, I mean, obviously all Magic iconography is taken from the real world, so I don't really have a proper argument why this shouldn't be here. It's just very strange. Are we going to see greys at some point in Magic? That feels odd. Hey, maybe that's the right flavour for aliens, though, is odd. Anyway. Next are the spirits of the house, the ghosts. I think most of which are glitch ghosts, which are people who died outside the house before there was a house. And seeing as there is no space left for the spirit realm after Valgavoth's ascension, all the ghosts have to squeeze themselves back into Duskmourn from their squished spirit realm, I guess. And the process of squeezing in through cracks and screens and things warps the ghosts and gives them that sort of glitchy, staticky effect, which you see around the edges of Duskmourn, I guess, and through windows, etc. Ghostly Keybearer is 3 and a blue for a 3/3 spirit. Flies, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, unlock a locked door of up to 1 target room you control. I was going to talk about rooms much later, but that could be an ability that could save you a lot of mana, based on how expensive some of those rooms are to unlock. And obviously, a Keybearer makes sense for unlocking rooms. Flavour achieved. Once charged with watching over every room in the original Vendrell house, it doggedly surveys the endless, ever-expanding labyrinth. So, it's implied, if not directly stated, I can't remember now exactly, that the previous inhabitants of the plane currently known as Duskmourn, whom in general didn't have access to magic on tap like some other planes, which caused them to create tech, etc. They also would summon lesser spirits, etc. to do their bidding, I guess, and be a bit awesome about it and have a bunch of slave ghosts. I don't know, maybe they're not slaves, maybe they're paying the ghosts, who knows? Either way. A lot of really good art this set. It's all actually expertly executed, even for the costumes and things I don't like. And obviously Magic has an incredibly high bar of excellent art, always. But the quality of the mist is incredible, and all just the different textures in this image just sell everything excellently. Oh, and the warping static on the lower half, well, all over the ghost, but on his lower half, it just, I can hear him coming through the door. Infernal Phantom is a 3 and a red for a 2/3, a spirit. It's got Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, Infernal Phantom gets +2/+0 until end of turn. When it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. I assume these are glitch ghosts, even though they're red and fiery. They don't have devil or demon type, but they are infernal, so I don't know if these are devil spirits of some kind. There is some other infernal nature to their resummoning, I guess, that's not common amongst other glitch ghosts. But interesting, I enjoyed the mystery. And they're tearing up the room poltergeist style, as well as burning the floor. I suppose the Eerie ability and its death ability come together to sort of create the idea that the more destruction your Infernal Phantom wreaks through a larger amount of rooms, the more damage it's going to do to your opponent at the end. Screaming Nemesis, one of the earliest cards spoiled. It's 2 and 1 red for a 3/3 with Spirit with haste. When it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. Ooh. I don't know. I mean, obviously this will shut down certain decks in 60 card formats, but maybe this is really powerful in, I don't know if life gain is really powerful in lots of 60 card formats or not, but in Commander, this is definitely going to be pretty brutal. The rest of the game as well, it's just, yeah, you don't see that text a lot, really. She sees the faces of those who wronged her in everyone she encounters. I like that the flavor text invokes this vindictive nature, this bitterness of the nemesis, because the effect is so mean. I like the art a lot. I don't necessarily... I like the abstract nature of this ghost. I think the lack of any environment is causing me to not know how to take the image, if you know what I mean. Like I need a bit of context to understand where I am in relation to the ghost, how big it is, etc. But I do like its design a lot. The alt art, I think I prefer, again, for having that context a little bit, although it is also an incredibly vague image of a figure coming through the glass, or just like a lot of hands and warping. It's expertly painted. I just feel like I need more of a form to grasp onto. Maybe this would be clearer in seeing the full unobstructed art as well. Shepherding Spirits. It's 4 and 2 white for a 4/5 spirit with flying and plane cycling. 2, which lets you discard the card and search for a planes. This way, Melinda. 100 years haven't improved your sense of direction. It's charming. And I don't think these ghosts are trying to scare me. Maybe some of the glitch ghosts are nice after all. Or they just want you to think that. Look at their hollow eyes. Can you trust them? I like the Eschery nature of the environment in the background. Rampaging Soul Rager is 2 and a red for a 1/4 spirit. It gets +3/+0 as long as there are 2 or more unlocked doors among rooms you control. The further it has to rampage in the house, the stronger it'll be. The souls of those who perished before Valgavoth's ascension exist now only as fractured echoes of who they once were. The ghosts are fractured in form and soul, it seems. The use of 2 colors to emphasize the glitch effect works really well here. Intruding Soul Rager is a red and a blue for a 2/2 with Vigilance. And tap, sacrifice a room, Intruding Soul Rager deals 2 damage to each opponent, draw a card. The souls of those who perished outside the house persist as fractured echoes, driven to share their misery with the living. Very similar to the last flavor text, although I am in love with Jeremy Wilson's art here. He's made excellent use of ultra-high contrast in many previous images before, but this might be my favorite of all of them. I love how few stark shapes make up the room, especially these shards of light in the foreground at the bottom. And this displaced ghost screeching as it's stretched across these 2 vivid colours. Beautiful. I suppose the sacrificing the room ability is supposed to represent this ghost tearing through the wall. Erratic Apparition, 2 and a blue for a 1/3. It flies, it's got Vigilance. Eerie, whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, Erratic Apparition gets +1/+1 until end of turn. What's got you all bent out of shape? Joseph, comedian, last words. Even the cheesy one-liner flavor text is good this set. I think that kind of flavor text works well in this horror setting because of the ironic comeuppance nature of it. It's the poster child of glitch ghosts from the Planeswalker's Guide article, and what an idealized version of a glitch ghost. It's distended and weird and also almost entirely comprised of static-y warping. The lighting does an excellent job selling the POV here. The ghost looks like it's being illuminated by our flashlight. And having the furniture in this cramped corridor be particularly antique looking is great for balancing against the ghost and making it feel even more alien. Spectral Snatcher, 4 and 2 black for a 6/5. It's got Ward, discard a card. It's got Swamp Cycling for 2. It's a common that's not doing anything particularly exciting, so it's not unflavorful just by being generic, really, and not clashing with its flavor identity. You can see this artist has a masterful command of light over the few cards over the cards they've had in this set, at least. And the purple coloring of the glitch effect, emphasizing the ghost, looks amazing. As does her hat, and all the dust that's dislodging to emanate around it. I really like the subtlety of the glitch effects here. But honestly, the style of the ghost seems to change from card to card. Friendly Ghost looks basically Victorian, and Ghostly Dancers are almost Renaissance looking. Some sort of post-Renaissance styles. Well, anyway, we'll look at Ghostly Dancers. They are 3 and 2 white for a 2/5 flyer. When it enters, return an enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand, or unlock a locked door of a room you control. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 3/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Good enchantment/room tribal card. I suppose ghosts unlocking doors can represent them just being intangible, I suppose. Effectively executed glitch effect. I like the CRT lines we can see running through these ghosts. They almost appear to be bringing the ballroom with them in the foreground. And I think the mirror in the background is supposed to be demonstrating that we can't see their reflections, which is another fun detail. Friendly Ghost, 3 and 1 for a 2/4. It flies. When it enters, target creature gets +2/+4 until end of turn. In life, Marcus had been a devoted guide of new arrivals. Death simply made it easier to get around. I love him disappearing between these curtains, and the billowing of the curtains gives him quite a heroic look. You can just hear him going, goodbye, as he fades away in front of all these gormless survivors. Stop playing hockey, there's monsters to run from. Obviously, it's a reference to Casper a bit. Yeah, the costumes of the ghosts are really all over the place in terms of time period, aren't they? Or at least in terms of the time periods they evoke. Next is Toys, an artifact creature type. Quickened Toys, as they're called in the guide. And they're basically just possessed toys that want to murder you, or follow you around creepily, or just be, scary toys. There's not much to it than that. Attack in the Box, 3 for a 2/4. Artifact creature toy. When Attack in the Box attacks, you may have it get +4/+0 until end of turn. If you do, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Pop goes the evil. It is kind of... They're both bad puns, Attack in the Box and Pop goes the evil, but the combination of the two... Well, maybe they're not terrible puns, but they're not great puns, but I kind of like the combination of them together with this art. Maybe if the art had been more obnoxious and in your face, then the two puns would be a bit worse, but I quite like the eeriness of the middle distance Jack in the Box emerging from the shadows with its face half covered in shadow. I think it kind of like it sells the puns a bit better than a goofier version of the art would have, and I appreciate that. Clockwork Percussionist is 1 red for a 1/1 monkey toy with haste. When it dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. I'm not quite sure what the... I guess maybe the monkey's music is inspiring you or something. Or you're inspired by its death is the reason that you... what's the word? Impulsively drawing a card. I don't know, maybe. Dance to its beat, or it will dance on your grave. But it's more like we're dancing on its grave, really, isn't it? When we get an effect for its death. Either way, I'm in two minds on the art. I like the monkey, and I love the quality of the lighting a lot. I think the drum's mouth is a little on the goofy edge for me and could have been a bit more creepy, but the lighting sells the image. And also this card is like a few other cards in that there are multiple versions of the same art, some of which have shadows and Celespawn like creeping in, which I love as an idea, and it's just an excellent way to inject more horror into the set, because you'll see the same card and be like, well, I swear there was a monster there before, but there isn't now. Yeah, maybe that makes the ones without the shadows scarier in a way for what they lack, for what is now hidden. I think Duskmourn specifically should have its own built-in sleight-of-hand cheating allowance rule, where if you manage to sneak in the alternate version of one of these onto the battlefield, then it's totally allowed. And your opponent's like, I swear there was a shadow there before. You're like, no, I'm just imagining things. Patched Plaything is 2 and a white for a 4/3 with double strike. Oh, man. Patched Plaything enters with 2 -1 counters on it if you cast it from your hand. When it ripped, its owner attempted to fix it. Something went wrong. I like seeing if you cast it condition that actually benefits you for blinking the creature for once. That's a rarer thing to see. But yes, if you blink this, it will get rid of its counters, or cast it from other means, like from your graveyard, etc. Actually, no, you're probably casting it from your graveyard, but put it from the graveyard onto the battlefield, I think, or turn it over by manifesting it with dread, etc. Yeah, I think the -1 counters do a good job of creating the flavor of it being stitched together in some way, though. Also implying that its true form is waiting to be unleashed beneath the stitches. Delightfully macabre, classic horror underlighting makes it even creepier. Oh, actually, I only just noticed the rope that's like holding it together. Oh, it's a bow that's holding it together around its neck. That's actually really good. Yeah, I really love how this maw that's... this gaping maw that stretches across the entire thing is like being pulled together into a more regular shape by the bow around its neck. Something definitely went really wrong for whoever originally stitched this back together. It does almost look like a doll's face stitched into the front, but we all want to believe that's the owner's face, don't we? Friendly Teddy, 2 for a 2/2. Artifact creature bear toy. When Friendly Teddy dies, each player draws a card. Best friends are great to share secrets with, like where the matches are, or how to find a human heart. I'm not sure what the flavor of everyone drawing a card is. Maybe the flavor text is implying that people store things in their teddy bears, or maybe the card is just supposed to represent everyone growing up, ditching the toys of youth for magic cards of those same toys. Johan Bodin's lighting here is stunning. The shadows being cast across the bear, and the underlighting and the backlighting just frame it eerily. Stitching on a few too many eyes has definitely given this bear an insectile appearance. And I like the teeth emerging from its chest. All the horror elements of this bear are really nicely, subtly done. I think that the teeth/claws in the foreground of the image were a bit of a step too far and kind of clash with the subtlety the rest of the image is giving off. But still an excellent piece. Piggy Bank, 1 and a red for a 3/2. Boar toy. When it dies, create a treasure token. Remember when you smashed me for a little pocket money? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, having a piggy bank make treasure when it dies. Yeah, absolutely. Although, come on, maybe it'd be too good if it made 2. Maybe they'd be upset about it. I don't know. But it's not a very full piggy bank if it's only got 1 treasure in it. I do love the lighting and the quality of Steve Ellis's paint here. Is it insulting to imagine this being voiced by Danny DeVito in the horror comic relief scene that would play in the Duskmourn movie? Split Skin Doll, 1 and a white for a 2/1. Toy. When it enters, draw a card, then discard a card unless you control another creature with power 2 or less. Those who mock its ragged surface and seeping eyes have a curious tendency to go missing. Lovely creepy doll design. I think my favourite thing about it are its pearlescent, maybe just pearl eyes set into its head and its little creepy upturned mouth. I think this ability almost evokes the flavour well. For the doll will make a card from your hand go missing unless there's a friend for it on the battlefield. Twitching Doll is 1 and a green for a 2/2. spider toy. It can tap to add 1 mana of any color and put a nest counter on itself. And it can also tap and you can sacrifice it to create a 2/2 green spider creature token with reach for each counter on Twitching Doll. Activate only as a sorcery. This is one of the first spoiled cards, and it was shown originally with different art here, and I couldn't tell you which of the two I prefer. They're both fantastic, excellent scenes. With this non-buyer box version, I love the stillness. I say that a lot, but it's a toy. So the fact that it feels, the image is very still, it feels very appropriate for just coming across it and not realizing how horrific it is until you look closer. And I like that you can see the doll's original broken face that the spiders have decided to replace with this macabre cat head. Yeah, and the fact that everything else is kind of, well, other than the fact that there's like branches behind the chair, which is great for the saying of Duskmourn, but the fact that there's nothing else out of place aside from this head and the spiders that make it up work even better to sell the horror of the mundane becoming horrific. The other Twitching Dolls art by John Tedrick creates like a perfect like jump scare scene as the horrific doll appears from under your bed covers to lunge at your face, giving you a perfect view of how constructed of spiders it is as they spill out onto you. It's excellent. The lighting is just perfect. I love the bed covers stretching out into the corners of the image, giving you this claustrophobic feeling. There is nothing but you and the bed sheets and the doll. And the nature of the body underneath the clothes looks like horrible and bulbous and amorphous, like it would, constructed of bugs. And the awful, creepy goose character that's cooked on its clothes. Oh, it's hard to say. They're two stunning pieces for a interesting and flavorful card. Living Phone, 2 and a white for a 2/1. When it dies, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 2 or less from among them, and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. The quality of the light on the lightning bolts dancing from the phone across the floor is beautiful. I love this little gnome character that's watching the phone off to the right, actually, as well. I'm not a fan of the technology of Duskmourn, but it's not a badly executed piece. Just another strange bit of modern-ish world iconography now ending up in Magic. It's fine. I'm fine with this. It's okay. It's fine. Yeah. I mean, I don't really have an argument why people of Duskmourn wouldn't have phones. Just it's odd. It's hard for me, you know. Anyway, I suppose the flavor with the phone is it's calling someone from the top 5 cards of your library, maybe? Giggling Skitter Spike. 4 for a 1/1. It's indestructible. When it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. And it has monstrosity 5 for 5. So if it's not monstrous, you can put 5 +1 counters on it, and it becomes monstrous. As everyone has already pointed out, it looks like Spike's thing from Toy Story, what he made. You know the one. That is a gorgeous illustration. Up close, though. Lovely, grimy metal textures. I love how the head is just floating in the middle of the cage and staring directly at us with those innocent eyes. I love how the face is perfectly obscured by the cage, just to make it creepier. And the cracked porcelain effect across the face, it's stunning. Yeah, and its perfectly central positioning in the image just makes it all the creepier. I love how the name as well enhances it, as now you can hear it. Ragged Playmate, 1 and a red for a 2/2. You can pay 1 and tap it. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. You tried to throw me away, Henry. I don't like that at all. I don't know how Raggedy Ann is supposed to sound. I don't really think that was. Maybe I just missed it, but I feel like Raggedy Ann wasn't really much of a cultural staple in the UK. But it's a toy, isn't it? Or maybe a movie, or maybe both. It's probably everything at this point, isn't it? Perhaps the rules text is evoked by this toy causing distractions for you? I don't know. Having the iconic hair of the doll double up as monstrous tentacles was a clever idea. And the POV execution here is also quite nice. And then we have a couple of legendary toys. Marvin, Murderous Mimic. He's a 2/2. He has all activated abilities of creatures you control that don't have the same name as this creature. Interesting. In a moment of bloodthirsty whimsy, a Razorkin once picked up a ventriloquist's puppet and used it to terrorize a survivor. Now it hunts on its own, with no one pulling its strings. Murderous Puppet, a classic horror trope I'm probably associated with Goosebumps. The alliterative name as well, and his design do feel like Marvin is just left off the list of 80s, slasher movie monsters. Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, and Marvin. I like the awkward way with which he's holding this cleaver. And obviously he's a ventriloquist puppet, so that's why he's mimicking all your creatures. Arabella, Abandoned Doll. A red and a white for a 1/3 legendary toy. When Arabella, Abandoned Doll attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. Every night, Corey threw the unsettling doll away. Every morning, it was back on the shelf, its eyes following her every move. So Arabella, I guess, in a way, can sort of be a lord of the toys, or a toy commander. I think all the toys have power 2 or less, except Edged Plaything, and Piggy Bank, I suppose. Not all of them fit in these cards, but still. It could be a sort of toy. It feels like a herald of the toys, especially with the art. Although Arabella seems to be the least creepy, actually, of all the dolls there. JP Target gave it an excellent storybook quality. The lighting sort of accentuating these false faces and the false nature of them. It almost looks like she's bringing along these extra toys as well, which I quite like. She shows up and produces a bunch of even creepier dolls with her, more every night. Simple design, simply executed, with great flavor, great art. Cool flavor card. That's all for now. See you in a few days when we'll be looking at more cards. We've still got more monsters to look at before we even get to the survivors. And all that remains to be done is to thank my wonderful patrons briefly, like all these Parcelmere and Brass Squires, all deserving of their names adorning this screen, like a marble plaque, but much less expensive. But over here, in this rolling battlesphere that's approaching, are a bunch of patrons whose names I shall read aloud. Sebastian Rees, Storfeting, Marshallmere, Eric Vaughan, Librarian of Leng, Steve-O, Santiago Adia, Chonga the Banished Mole King, Patrick Dane, Mimio, Bob, and Dark Flame. Thank you immensely all. Thank you so much for your support, all of you, and thank everyone for getting to the end. Today's special secret after dinner magic card is Windrake. I think that was the copy of Windrake that I first got as well in some set a million years ago. Oh, nostalgic.